Free Speech TV, joining you from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, and I'll be bringing you conversations with activists and change makers attending the largest progressive political conference in the United States. And joining me right now is Analilia Mejia, co-director of the Center for Popular Democracy. She's working on a new campaign called Defend the 14th about the Trump administration's attacks on the 14th Amendment. Welcome to Free Speech TV, Analilia.
It's so nice to be with you in person and to connect with your listeners and viewers.
Thank you so much for being here. What is the 14th Amendment? We should all know this, but put it into context. Why is it important?
Okay, so at the founding of our nation, we have essentially a group of founding fathers who established exactly the kind of nation they desired. One in which only the cisgendered, land-owning, white Christian men had access to the vehicle of government. It is after the Civil War in which we essentially refound our nation. We actually have a second founding in the United States. The first one is the Revolutionary period, and then after the Civil War, in many ways, the words of freedom that were contained in the Bill of Rights in our Constitution that were hardwired and only existed for this small group of landed male gentry, we literally grabbed those words and we pulled them towards ourselves, right? We pulled them so that they covered women, so that they covered the dispossessed, so that they covered black people, so that they covered the formerly enslaved or the dispossessed tribal nations. And ever since that moment, that second founding, our ideological opponents didn't stop, right? They still want that world as they had founded it. And so it's almost been a tug of war. And so if we look at the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments as the founding documents of that second nation, one in which everyone could be free, not just white landowning men, then you understand why there has been a death by 1,000 paper cuts campaign waged way before Trump, because it actually started at the moment of passage all the way in the 1800s.
And so how has Trump specifically taken aim at the 14th Amendment? We've heard of the effort to roll back birthright citizenship.
Birthright citizenship, due process, equal protection. I mean, here's the thing about the 14th Amendment. Again, it is the founding document of the America we in fact love. So if you are someone that believes that anyone in our nation should have their day in court, due process, or if you believe that just because you were born here or in this gender or with this within this ethnicity or whatever thing, quote unquote, is an identifying marker, if you believe that irrespective of that, you are a human being that should be treated with equity under the eyes of the law, then you are in fact upholding the 14th Amendment. Even things like, the denial of running for office for insurrectionists is in the 14th. Birthright citizenship for all persons in the 14th. Due process, I mentioned, equal protection. We wouldn't have so many things. Right. Housing laws, healthcare laws, even collective bargaining for unions. It's all anchored on the 14th Amendment. And yet our movement doesn't fight for it in that very clear way. I'll hand it back to you, but I'll say this last thing. Our ideological opponent's base, whenever we say anything that so much as smells like we're challenging the Second Amendment, that base riles up. And so I'm here, and our network is here, trying to create the kind of momentum that will incite our people to defend such a fundamental element of the Constitution, our founding document, and these rights and protections.
I want to hone in a little bit on due process because it's a word it's a phrase that gets bandied about, but I'm not sure if enough Americans understand it, and especially these days when we're talking about the unleashing of immigration and customs enforcement on people of color, whether they're undocumented, DACA recipients, green card holders, or U.S. citizens,
or even
and
mayors or Congress people
Right.
visiting a detention center.
So the idea is, but if you're an immigrant, the opponents of the 14th Amendment would say if you're an immigrant, you don't get due process rights. But isn't it meaningless unless it applies to everybody?
Actually, for those who reject it, it is ignorance that makes them say as much, because when you read the articles of the 14th Amendment, when you read those sections, the thing that pops out is all persons.
Yes.
So
exactly.
all persons
If you're a
are
human being,
yes.
it
If
applies
you
to
are a human being under the jurisdiction of these United States, you get due process. You get equal protection. Your children get birthright citizenship. It's a non-negotiable, and it was with intention, because remember, the 14th Amendment is trying to correct for the horror and the harm and the injustice of slavery.
So, and just to emphasize again, the idea of due process, if it didn't apply to everybody, Homeland Security could come and say, we've decided you're not a citizen and we're going to kick you out of the country.
Yes.
And if you don't have due process, you can't say, hang on, I am a citizen, because you need due process to be able to prove who you. So if it doesn't apply to everybody, it is meaningless.
Yes, and that is the objective, right? What is being proposed is a return to a system which existed in the United States. Authoritarianism is not new, because what else would you call Jim Crow, right? When you have a system in which, because of where you're born or who you're born to, you end up with different, varying, or non-existing rights, where someone could run up to you in the middle of the street, masked, and grab you and throw you in the back of some truck or paddy wagon or cart and sell you into slavery. Well, tell me, how is what happened, for folks who watch like 12 Years a Slave, right? That movie is a true story where an individual who was born free, or who was free, ends up being captured by masked men and is sent down and sold into slavery in order to extract value out of his body. You tell me how that's any different than the scores of people who are being stolen off the streets by masked people, being sold to corporations that run prisons. It is the same thing. Last thing, I keep saying it's the last thing, but we have to understand, I'm fired up because to me, the Huns are at that gate. Yeah. This is the fight. What I would want all of your listeners to be able to, and your viewers, to be able to really hold is that, as you said, without due process, we have no rights or recourse. You cannot defend yourself. Yeah. And so the erosion of that, you have to ask yourself why. And I often share, the oligarch and the authoritarian, they share a common enemy. The oligarch is just a greedy corporation that would like to get rid of any accountability that an informed populace could have, so that they could enrich themselves, even if it costs people their lives, right? That's the oligarch's motivation. For the authoritarian, an authoritarian is just a corrupt politician that wants to stay out of jail. And the thing for both of them is the public accountability in courts, the public accountability in press, and the public accountability in elections. So it is not surprising. Oh, and an informed populace. So you tell me, going after education, a radicalized Supreme Court, the erosion of the franchise, state-sanctioned violence, tell me that's not what's happening. I mean, it's a repeat of history.
So tell me about the campaign specifically. Defend the 14th is the campaign that Center for Popular Democracy has launched. How are you hoping that the American people, what are you doing to ensure the American people rise up in defense of this campaign with the same ferocity that the Second Amendment defenders do with their amendment?
It's an ambitious goal, but it is slow and steady, always wins that race. So it's the bottom line is that there has been an erosion of civic education and understanding in our country, intentional. there is an opportunity, there's a responsibility for all of us to each one teach one. So the content of this amendment is knowable. We've created a website in order to synthesize information for folks who want to go in. So if you want to check it out, it's www.defendthe14th.org, where you could see the different sections of the amendment. We are working to make it a robust website where you can download video content, where you could download trainings, where you could sign up to take a pledge. And here's the thing. I think this is a moment in which we should call on every single one of our representatives, whether it's a city councilman, a senator, and everything in between. And we should make a demand that they pledge to uphold the 14th Amendment and the Constitution.
The challenge, of course, is that, as you said, the Supreme Court is basically bought at this point, and eventually Trump and his ilk, not just Trump, but the people surrounding him and supporting him, the idea is to if the idea is to fully overturn the amendment, the Supreme Court is the deciding factor, the ultimate deciding factor, and 6 out of 9 are in their pocket.
No, they're not. Here's what I'll tell you. First, it's not the first time that the Supreme Court makes a decision towards progress and then rescinds it. That actually happened after Reconstruction in the late 1800s. The Supreme Court undid their own decision on voting rights. So one, we have seen this before where the Supreme Court is captured and taken over. But
abortion, same thing.
Yes,
right?
yes. But all is not lost, because there's this theory called the Overton window. And essentially it's this idea that the people help clarify for elected officials, for our courts, what is within the acceptable. And we need to create the kind of backlash from the bottom to the top. That's why I say we need to do pledges, we need to do trainings, we need to go to, whether it's a training at a church basement or just talking to your neighbors. We need to spread this just support for the amendment, the protections within this amendment, and make a demand. Because one, the Supreme Court, we have midterm elections next year that are going to be pivotal. We're going to have to make a demand so that those elections actually take place. I believe we will have to fight for the right to vote next year. And all the while, we can be working in our states, grassroots, creating the kind of demand that ultimately creates the conditions. It doesn't happen overnight, but it creates the conditions to pull those words back. We have done it before. I promise you, America is capable.
Analilia, thank you so much. Give us the websites that you want people to find out.
So if you want to learn more about the campaign to defend the 14th, it's www.defendthe14th.org. And we also have a poetry contest, slam, etc. It's wethepoets.org. We're using arts and culture to also deepen engagement and understanding. So thank you. It's so nice to be in community with all of you.
Thank you so much. Analilia Mejia is co-director of the Center for Popular Democracy, and we've been talking about Defend the 14th, which is a campaign that her organization has put forward. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, here with Free Speech TV, broadcasting from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans.